Welcome to You Can Trust Yourself with Meg and Maggie. Nothing feels as good as listening to your own voice, and each week we have conversations to help you do just that. Get comfy, grab your favorite fun drink, and let's dive into this week's episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of You Can Trust Yourself with Meg and Maggie. Okay, so we're just going to jump right into the really important things. Okay, really important things, because I'm getting harassed in real life about the fact that we talked about how we wanted you guys to send in community names, and then you guys actually sent in community names, and then we forgot to talk about it again. So we have to talk about this. Are you ready?
Yes, I am ready. This is very important business to our listeners. So spit it out, Maggie.
Very important business. Okay, so we actually got two incredible names that we are going to use together to make our community name. So the first one, which will represent the entire community, us, you, the whole thing together, is the Trust Pod. So this is a term that we can use to describe the podcast itself. It can describe the whole of all of us together. And I'm just really excited about that one. So shout out to my sister. She did great. So that is first. And then the second name that we got sent in, which will represent more of you guys, the listeners, is the Trustees.
It's perfect.
I'm so excited.
It's truly wonderful. We've been asking and polling you all for so long, and we got some awesome ideas, and these just felt like, oh my gosh, of course, like this is the Trust Pod community. Here we are in our little pod of, doing this work together of trying to get closer and nurturing our ability to trust ourselves. And we're in this, there's something about being in a pod all together that just makes my heart warm and fuzzy. And then those who are in said pod are trustees. And I was telling Maggie, I was like, I think that's some fancy word for like business or finance or who knows what. I don't know what it is. Where you like uphold certain values, and you have like you are entrusted with a agenda for how you show up to said thing. So trustees as our community just felt like a beautiful fit.
Yeah, I'm so excited for this play on words with both of them. I think that it is just, it like you said, it fits perfectly. So I'm very excited about that. Welcome to the Trust Pod. I'm so excited to have you here as a trustee. And yeah, so that was the first order of business that we urgently needed to take care of. Okay, secondly, into the topic of the day. All right, so Thanksgiving is this week, right? If you're listening to this in real time, this episode comes out on Monday, and then Thanksgiving is on Thursday. And today we wanted to have a conversation around how we can curate and have the day that we desire. Right. Yes. And with that comes the idea of protecting our own peace. Right. And really being intentional about how we want to show up and what type of experience we want to have with our friends and family. So that is where we wanted to go today. And we're going to do a couple of exciting things. And the first one, which I'll turn over to you, Meg, is we want to talk about setting intentions and pre-planning the day, right? So we want to take a little bit of time ahead of time to think about what we want our experience to look like. And you mentioned wanting to lead us through a little visualization exercise.
Yes, I do. And I just want to say too that these episodes that come out around the holidays tend to be some of my favorite ones. I'm not sure what it is about our holiday episodes that just really stick out in my mind. They tend to be a lot of our most listened to episodes right around this time. So I'm really excited to be having this conversation today. So we're going to do a visual exercise. And if you're driving, do not close your eyes. But if you're not driving and you're listening to this while you're home, I invite you to just kind of get cozy and get comfortable. I use visual exercises a lot of times with my clients because for those of you who don't know, I'm a therapist in training. So when I say clients, I mean those who are in therapy session with me. And the reason why visual exercises can be so powerful is because sometimes when we're somewhere, or most of the time I should say, when we're somewhere, there's something about having a vision for where you're trying to go. So we know that wherever we are may not be exactly where we want to land, but the steps in between that can get a little dicey, and it takes time and energy and effort and failure and all the things that growth comes with, right? But the first step is the vision. How do we know even how to take those fumbly, weird, mucky steps, if you will, if we don't have a vision for where we're going? So that's why we're going to do this visual exercise. So Maggie, I'm going to make you do it with me. You're going to get weird
Great.
and you're going to close your eyes. Okay?
I love closing my eyes.
This is easier for me to walk the listeners, the trustees, through this if you are leading the way. So if you could
I
please
got
close your
you.
eyes, Maggie. We're on the topic of Thanksgiving this week. That's coming up, right? A lot of thoughts can come up around holidays. Joy, excitement, yummy food, cozy vibes. But there also may be some things swirling around for people who are feeling a little nervous. Maybe you're a little anxious about seeing your family. Maybe you really don't want to. Maybe you're in a season where you're like, I'm struggling that I don't really have a place where I really want to belong to right now and go to, right? So holidays can bring up a ton of feelings from every spectrum, right? And so we're going to make space for all of that here for you today. Anyone who is in whatever spectrum of that you're on, you're here with us in the Trust Pod. You are in this space with us, and let's walk through this visual exercise. So I want you to picture your day, Maggie and trustees. Okay? You're getting ready, you're waking up, whatever you may be looking forward to or not looking forward to, you're going to have a day, right? And for most of us, we usually want to make the day as good as we possibly can within our control, right? Because that's all we can control is how we show up on that day. So I want you to visualize first in the present moment what that may look like for you. What are you doing in the morning? What's your day looking like? Where are you going? Think of any smells that may come to mind. Is there a certain candle that makes you think of fall and Thanksgiving? Could be a yummy apple scented one. Maybe you put on some fuzzy socks and you get in a comfy outfit. Maybe you wear the coziest sweatshirt you own and you're just really locking in for the cozy vibes. If I'm speaking to Maggie's vision, she might have a really delicious chai latte because that is one of her loves. And that may be how she says, I'm going to start out my day for this holiday. And Maggie may be envisioning her ideal Thanksgiving right now, and that may be present for her. And for those of you who what you're visualizing for this year's Thanksgiving, if it doesn't feel like the one maybe you want long term, let's shift into thinking about what it could look like for the future. Right? Because we're not always in the place where we want to be the most. Sometimes we're still in the process of moving towards our vision. So as you shift your focus from the present day, I want you to start to think about what your ideal, most beautiful meal would look like. Who's there? What are you wearing? What food will be included? What's your fun drink of choice, as we like to say here on the podcast? Who are you speaking to? How are you speaking to yourself? What are the conversations like at this table with you? Really visualize exactly where you would like to be in the future. As you wrap up this visual exercise, you can start to bring your awareness back to where we are right now, present day, whenever you're listening to this. If you're listening to this Monday when it comes out, hi. Let's get into today's episode. But we really wanted to start with that visual exercise for you all. Maggie may have fallen asleep throughout it. Just kidding. And hopefully that was helpful to set the tone for where we're going to bring you into today's episode.
That was lovely.
Was
I
it?
love doing visualizations. It's one of my favorite techniques to do because it took a lot of practice for me to actually be able to do it well. My brain used to just spin out of
Hmm.
control and think about my to-do list and the eggs I need to buy and all that stuff, all the worries. But
Those
um,
eggs.
those darn eggs. But I've gotten like pretty good at it, and it's really
Yeah.
nice to experience that sometimes. So thank you for leading us through that. That
Yes,
was lovely.
of course. I want to really start with the intention, and I'm going to like kick it back over to you, Maggie, because you are a queen at many things, but intention setting, I feel like, is one of them. So I really want to dive into, after we've done that exercise and are thinking about all that. I'm so glad you enjoyed it, by the way. I always wonder what it's like. Someone needs to do that to me soon because I do it a lot in session, and I I need to be doing it more on myself too. Um, but holding the vision for this episode is what's really going to help us be able to kind of like soak in what we're talking about. And we're going to go a little more intimate at times during this episode. So it's just a really special one to have with you all. But when we were planning this episode, we started talking about intentionality and the day you desire. So, Maggie, in regards to Thanksgiving and this upcoming holiday, for those of you who are celebrating, is this a place where you find that intention is really important? And I already know the answer is yes, by the way, everybody, spoiler alert. Connecting with the ones you love. What does it mean to you to have the day you desire?
Yeah, this is such a great question and something that I personally believe we all need to be considering before any sort of big event, whether it's a holiday that we all celebrate or something going on in our own personal lives.
Mm-hmm.
But setting intentions is really important to me, especially on a out of the ordinary day. Um, the day that I desire and how I set the intentions, it goes hand in hand, right? Because I want my intention setting process to match what I would
Mm,
actually like to experience. And that may sound pretty obvious, right? But actually, and I've experienced this, which is why I think I bring that up, is that it's really easy to set intentions about what your ideal is and kind of not take in consideration reality and then be upset that
mm,
your intentions didn't come true. Right.
mm-hmm.
And so, something that I think is really important to note is that I love a visualization exercise like that, where for me, for example, you're asking, what is my ideal vision Thanksgiving? Well, I want to host Thanksgiving. I want everyone to come to my house. But unfortunately, I currently live in an 800 square foot house, and having all 10 of Cause's siblings, their significant others, and their children in my house would not work, right? So, I can visualize that. I can envision it. I can work towards that, wish towards it in the future. But that's not reality in this moment,
Mm,
right? So if I set my intention to have that experience, well, it's not coming true. So I don't know what to tell you. Like you're setting
yes.
yourself up for failure, right? So I like to do that, but then also I would consider myself to be a realist. Like I am very much grounded into what reality is. And so it's really important for me to set intentions. You could also call them goals, right? That have a good chance of coming true. So
Mm,
for me right now in this season of my life, intentions definitely include a fun drink for sure. Would love a chai latte. Hopefully it's cold enough that it can be hot. That would be
yeah.
ideal. Um, but some other intentions for me on Thanksgiving, one is exercising early in the day because I know that moving my body doesn't have to be anything intense. I don't have to sign up for the turkey trot. I could, but I don't have to, right? I could just go for a walk. I'm so excited for your turkey trot.
It's my first
Um,
one, everybody.
I'm so excited for you. But it doesn't have to be anything in particular. It could if I love something in particular, right? But moving my body makes me feel good. Therefore, I
Mm,
want to do that, right?
yeah.
Especially when I'm going to be socializing a lot because socializing drains me usually.
Mm,
And so like, even if it's the best experience ever, I'm still exhausted afterwards. So I want to make sure I'm priming myself, preparing myself with things that make me feel good, right? So that's one of my intentions. Another intention, which actually just I wrote about this last week in my article and was talking about it on the radio, but I like to feel good. And we were talking about this last week on the podcast. I don't like it when I don't feel good, because when I
Yeah.
don't feel good, I don't want to be wherever I am. And so
Right.
intentions for me include eating delicious foods, obviously. Like, am I going to make a dairy-free pumpkin pie? Yes. Am I going to eat it? Yes, I am. Okay. And I don't want to eat so much food that I don't feel good, that I'm exhausted, that
Mm.
I don't want to be there. Because the other really important part of Thanksgiving for me is spending time and having conversations with people that I love. And I can't do that
Right.
if I don't feel good.
Mm. There was so much goodness in what you just said that like I have to go back and I'm using like analogies of food. Like I just want to like dig in and like comb through and eat up what you just said. The first part in particular that really spoke to me was the reality part, the intention and reality. So, this is a really great section that I think needs more attention. And it's interesting because you just described yourself as somebody who tends to be more a realist, right? Like you were kind of grounded in reality and what's possible and what's not in this moment. I identify as more of a dreamer. I tend to, it's harder for me to grasp onto. I mean, listen, I'm not out here doing anything crazy, but I am such a dreamer at heart and such a visualer at heart that sometimes when I realize that my dreams or visions aren't the reality, I have a very difficult time accepting that. I don't enjoy it. And I will probably fight you tooth and nail on it until I realize that it's not reality and it is where we're at. It is where we're at. I also love that you shared with us and the trustees that, look at that, it's just rolling off the tongue now,
I know,
everybody.
it's perfect.
It just feels like you're more invested. Your listeners, like if you're listening to this podcast, like you're committed to the
Yeah.
work that we are of trusting ourselves and doing all this great work. So it just feels really good to say that. But intentions versus reality or coinciding with reality. I love that you said that because I have gone through so many times in my life where I have set an intention and then been miserably disappointed that that intention did not happen. Right. And it could be something totally wild and out there and far fetched. And like, Megan, there was no way that was happening. Right. Um, Maybe by a long shot. And maybe it would have. I don't care. I still love the fact that I tried it. So I have no regrets there in that aspect. But when we're thinking about the holidays and one such as Thanksgiving, where we're doing a lot of gathering and things like that, the reality part is so important because just like you, Maggie, I would love to be hosting. There's a dream scenario in my future where I host a lot of holidays and I have my future kids there and my husband and our families and blah, blah, blah. And that's not the reality right now. Similarly to you, we're not in that hosting phase. We're just not there yet. And so that's my intention for the future, right? So, coming to terms with the reality of the present and still figuring out what intentions you can have some more groundedness in and more of a realistic stake in how that day goes is really important. So, this year, my dream goal of hosting and having everybody come over, and I decide, a lot of who's there and being in my home cultivates different conversations and things like that. I don't have control over that this year. So, this is where, if it's okay with you, Maggie, I would love to kind of get into more of a almost like intimate conversation between you and I of what can this day look like for us, right? So, we've talked about the intention and how important that is. Now, let's talk about this is where we're at. This is the reality of it, but we can still have the day we desire while being firmly planted in the reality that we may not always want to be here, but we're here right now. So, how can we still find joy and a day we desire within the parameters of our current state? I'm leaving this all
Yeah.
on you. I hope you have ideas. I don't have any. I'm just kidding.
I have so many
Thank
ideas. Okay.
goodness. Take it away.
Okay. So this is like my favorite part of the conversation because it all it falls on us, right? It falls on us. It's our responsibility to curate the experience that we want to have, because if we don't, somebody else is going to curate it for us, right?
That
And
part, can you repeat it? I'm so sorry.
yeah,
Say it
it's
about
on
5 more
us.
times.
It's on us to curate our own experience, because if we don't, somebody else is going to curate it for us. And I'm not talking
Amen.
about the visual aesthetic of the day, or the, like that type of stuff, or the whole menu, right? If we're not hosting, if you are hosting, then you probably are curating those things. But if you're not hosting and we're talking about the experience, like this specific experience that we're talking about, where our dream is not realized yet, right? Where our reality is different than what we ultimately desire, then we've got to work with what we got. Okay. And that's on us. It's not on anyone else to allow us to have as best of a day as we can, given the reality of what's going on, right? So what's really important to me in this situation, I feel like this is a topic that I talk about every single week, but in a different way, is making sure that the actions that I'm taking and the expectations that I have are about me,
Mm.
right? Because I can't control what other people are going to say or do, or how they're going to show up, or how they're going to react or respond to me, right? I don't have any control over those things. And if I give all of my power away to allowing how someone else shows up to determine whether or not I have a good day, I can guarantee you right off the bat, and I used to do this, by the way, that I'm not having a good day. That day is not going to go well if I'm expecting to feel good based off of somebody else, right? And so it's on me to make sure that I do that. So what does that actually look like for me? I'm sure we're going to go into like so many different things,
Yes, I
but
can't wait.
what's coming to mind right now, the first thing that I want to talk about is that I've trained myself to smile, which is like, this is like a little bit, I don't know. I wasn't expecting to talk about this, but this is what's on my mind. Even when you'll notice, if you're watching on YouTube or you see any video, Megan's talking and I kind of have this like light smile on my face most of the time. Like, I don't usually look like I'm like, glaring, or have like a straight angry-ish looking face, but I've had to train myself to do that. Okay,
Hmm.
because default was serious RBF for me, okay, all the time. But here's the deal, is that what that does, if I allow myself to be in that state, is that affects my emotional state as well, right? So what I've learned about myself is that if I can train myself to smile more, then I'm in a better mood more, right? And that's on me. I'm getting to enhance my experience and have more positive emotions because of a physical action that I am taking that is allowing me to experience those things, right? So, how does this relate to Thanksgiving? Well, if I'm not in a place that I necessarily want to be, or I'm not feeling, 100% confident, or I'm not excited about the conversation that's going on around me, or whatever the situation of the moment is, right? I can either allow that to bring me down, right? Or I can tap back into this thought process and experience of, I'm going to smile, and I'm going to sit up tall, and I'm going to just control those things about my existence that I can control, which therefore will relate to the experience that I'm having in the moment.
Mm. I've never heard you put it that way, Maggie, and it's really interesting. First of all, I love that it's so about you, right? Because we're so trained and conditioned to be pleasant for others. And that's not what you're saying at all, right? You're saying your experience, you're doing, and you've trained yourself to have a physical tool almost that you have that impacts you and your experience, which of course then is a byproduct of others most of the time, but that's not your reason to do for doing it, right? This is a very different tool of, I want to enjoy my moment, this moment with others. It's not simply to hide my uh unhappiness. It's to be here in a way that I want to show up. And I'm trying to cultivate more of that by taking this action. Is that what you meant? Did I explain that well?
Yeah, I think you did. And I think the beauty of it is that if you are in a place where your smile is to hide something else, listen, we've all been there at a certain point, right? Like, that's not the end of the world. If that's what's going to get you through to, have a decent experience on that day, that's okay too, right? It doesn't have to be perfectly well intended with a perfect foundation, right? But if we can move towards, making it less about someone else and a little bit more about us, what I've found is that that makes it easier to build a habit around, right? Because it takes away the opportunity for someone else to influence how I'm showing up in that moment,
Mhm.
right? Because if I'm smiling and in a good mood and making conversation because I'm concerned about how that affects the other person, well, now what I've done is if that person does not respond by smiling or is not in a good mood, I've now made that about me. And that's
Yes.
not about me, it's about them,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
so I don't want to give my power away in that way to someone else because
Mm.
I can't control them. All I can control is me. And so if I can work a little bit to make my experience better, then that's what I want to do. And a lovely byproduct is that usually it makes it better for everyone else.
Yes. It's almost like a hack. You're describing it as
Mhm.
almost like a hack that you found that works for you. And something that you said that I like had a very physical reaction to was the part of you saying like, can you say the wording again? You know exactly what I'm talking about. What was the exact words?
About
Do you remember?
curating your day.
Curating your day or somebody else will. Do you remember your exact
Yeah, yeah,
wording?
yeah, yeah. It's on us to curate our own experience, or else someone else will curate it for us.
Yes, that part. Okay, I want to talk about that part.
Okay.
That applies to life and
Yes, it
trusting
does.
yourself in general. And welcome to the You Can Trust Yourself podcast. And here's our trust pod. That is that work of if we don't curate our own lives, our own days, our own moments, our own experiences, man, oh man, do you leave space for somebody else to come on in there and curate it for you?
Yes.
Right. And so that is, you just left me with something today, Maggie, and I'm very grateful for that.
I'm so glad.
And and I'm sure that the trustees are going to feel the same way because that is such a powerful and such a important aspect that we all have in life, and in particular holidays and meals and things like that. So let's get back to the Thanksgiving part of it, and I'm going to give you some of my practical ways and more on the intimate side for me. So that part that you said, Maggie, about curating your own day, one of my intentions is I'm showing up to Thanksgiving head to toe covered in Meg.
Please describe.
I want to show up smothered in myself. Okay. And that doesn't mean in a weird way. I mean, if you were visualizing Meg, it's probably like I described last time. It definitely has feathers and like some kind of like,
The pink feather
I
heels.
think, yeah, it's probably like a silk pajama set with feathers on the bottoms and the cuffs because that just like feels very Meg. But that just means that I am showing up to Thanksgiving this year myself, head to toe. I'm me. Okay. And I'm leaving Thanksgiving me. So when I walk in the door to where I'm going, I'm showing up as myself. And when I walk out of that door, I'm showing up as myself. And I say this to you to say that for many, many, many years, I didn't. I would walk through the door, usually myself or trying my best to learn who I was, right? Because that's always a journey and we're always trying our best to keep getting closer and closer to our true selves. So I would show up that way or wherever I was at in my journey of becoming my truest self. But I would leave with little pieces that were almost up for discussion about myself, right? And that wasn't always. There were a lot of great moments with friends and family where that wasn't the case, but there's also been moments where that was the case. And if any of you are in that right now, I want to speak directly to you because that is a feeling in and of itself. To walk into a place that is supposed to be perceived as safe and loving and all the things that we want from healthy, mutual, beneficial relationships, right? A primal desire of ours as humans, Not everybody has the same memo, and not everybody is reading the same agenda that you are. So if that is you and you're showing up to a place right now where you're feeling like, I'm scared that a part of me will be activated or left behind, or vice versa, right? You're not walking in yourself and you're not leaving totally yourself. I want to talk to some of the practical ways that I have learned to be able to do this. So one of those is, like Maggie said, to really set the intention the day of. How are we starting our day? Most meals don't take place until the afternoon or the evening time, right? So most of the time on a holiday, most of us are not working. Those of you who are, I know a lot of people, healthcare, first responders, we love you. We appreciate you for giving us these days to have for most of us to be off, right? So a lot of times we have the mornings. What is your morning looking like? Smother yourself in what you value. I know I'm using a lot of weird words like smother and
She's
I think
thinking
it's the
about the
I think
gravy on the
I
turkey or the
am. I think
cranberries.
it's the
And
turkey. Like soon I'm gonna say like baste yourself in like and then like butter yourself, oil yourself, and you guys will be like, this is getting really weird, this podcast. But smother yourself. I'm going with it. I love it. It feels right. Smother yourself in that love that you desire. Okay. What do you value? Do you value kindness? Read something to yourself. Do you value movement and energy and feeling good? Join a turkey trot with me. It's my first one. I always haven't been good about movement, but we're trying to get there. Okay. So sign up with me and DM me that you're doing it. I'll send you a picture of my red face at the end. What feels good for you? Cover yourself head to toe in that the morning of. Be comfortable. What do you feel best in? If you feel best in a full suit or a dress, wear the suit, wear the dress. If you feel comfortable in some leggings and some socks, cozy socks and a sweatshirt, put that on. That's probably what I'll be in. Make yourself comfortable. That's I know it sounds weird, but if you're in a place where you got to protect yourself, you got to protect your peace, you don't feel like you can totally, melt into the arms in that moment with those you were with, melt into your own self in it. Okay. So cover yourself in what feels good. I will be wearing my Barefoot Dreams socks. Okay.
I have to
My
get some of
leggings.
those.
They're really fantastic. Okay. I think it's about, I don't know the exact price. It's under $20 for a pair, but they're worth it. I know it's a little expensive for a fuzzy sock. Make the investment. Okay. Come sponsor us
Okay.
soon, Barefoot Dreams. We'll talk about it. Get in your coziest leggings, not too tight. I like my Alliance, whatever they may be for you. The coziest sweatshirt of your life. I will be wearing a loose fitting Skims bra because I will not be feeling uptight in a bra on a day that may already feel a little hard. We're not going to use a tight bra as well. Okay, so you're going to put on a loose fitting one, or F it, just go, free balling it, whatever you got to do. Okay. I'm going to get us back on track now. What I'm trying to say is that morning is your prep, and we'll go into more of the practicals, but I want to hear from Maggie too. I feel like that morning is really important for what and how we create the day that we desire, because you get that first part of the day to essentially set the entire tone for the rest of the day before you walk into whatever the scenario may be, as good or as bad or as in between as it may be. We have that time for ourselves, and how we use that time is always really important, right? That's always important in life, but especially on days like this, it's really important. And so I'm wondering, Maggie, for you, and you can talk about some of the morning ones if that feels, like you want to, but I'm also curious if you have anything, like you've done the morning, you've done the prep, you've done what feels good for you. What are some things in the, throughout the evening, afternoon of said meal, wherever you may be, that have helped you throughout some of those times?
Yeah, I definitely have some of those. But before we get into that, I do want to talk about one thing about the morning. So, you know how when you're running late to something, all of a sudden it's like you're in a time warp and time speeds up and then you're later and later and later and you're like, what the heck? Like 10 seconds went by, but actually it was 2 minutes. Like, how is that possible? But then sometimes if you're early to something, you get in the opposite time warp and time slows down and you're like, what's going on here? Like, how is everything going so slow? Have you ever experienced that?
Yeah, time fuck.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I like that term.
I made that up on this. Again, explicit trustees, 18 and older trustees only.
Okay. So that I feel like is the perfect description for me of what happens depending on what I do the morning of a holiday. Okay. So if I do what you just said and I take care of myself and I wake up early enough and I move my body, it's like time slows down. I can respond really well. The day is easy, right? If I don't do that, if I sleep in, I don't move, I'm rushed out of the house, I forgot to cook the Manchego mac and cheese and now I'm doing it in the morning, blah, blah, blah. Time speeds up and I am freaking out all day, right? I have this like baseline layer of anxiety that I'm carrying with me throughout the day because I didn't get a good start, right? And so that is something that, I mean, I feel that way every day, not just on a holiday, but the more socializing, like I was talking about before, I need to do in a day, the more prepared I need to be so I can feel calm and like time is moving slowly. Okay. So that's kind of how I think about it. And when I don't get out of bed, I don't want to get out of bed. Like those are the things that will help me be like, okay, if I get up, I'll feel better. If I get up, I'll
Mhm.
feel better. Right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I think about it for the morning. But for the actual event, right? I'm sure we've all been there when you're like sitting in a room or at a table. One of the things that makes me so angry is when someone makes some offhanded comment about like women or something like that. Like, don't get me started over here, okay? And so like gender roles or whatever, anything like that, okay? Makes me very angry. Do I
Mhm.
want to feel angry on Thanksgiving? No, that wasn't part of the intention of the day, right? So in that type of situation, okay, I'm experiencing or noticing something that is not in alignment with what I would like to experience. I'm probably just going to get up and leave the room,
Mm.
honestly. I'm probably just going to get up and leave the room because I have sat in the room, I've sat at the table through those types of things before, where you know that if you try to engage in conversation with this person, they're not going to listen to you, right? They don't
Mhm.
actually want to hear anyone else's opinion. They just want to hear themselves talk. We've all been there, right? It's not worth it. And so when I sit there in that moment and listen to it, I'm affecting my experience. The only person who's being affected by this is me, right? And the only person who has the power to change my experience is me because it's not on them to stop talking. Would I love them to stop talking? Yeah, probably, right? But I don't get to control that. All I can control is where I am and what I am doing in response to things that are going on around me. And so that has been one of the biggest things that I have started to do is just leave the room. It's a lot
Mm.
easier when you're at a big event, right? Because like for us, there's tons of family there. It's easy to move around, just join a different conversation. If you're at a
Mm.
more intimate family gathering, it might feel more challenging to leave the
Mhm.
room. But really, just excuse yourself and go to the bathroom, right? Excuse yourself, go to the bathroom, take a couple deep breaths, like remind yourself, ground back into what is the intention that I set? How do I want to experience this day? And figure out, what kind of tools work for you to bring you back to that because it's not worth it to sit there and endure something like that for the whole time just because we feel like we don't have control when we really
Mhm.
do.
Mhm. I'm so happy you said that, Maggie. And I think I remember you mentioning that when we've done episodes in the past. So, for any of you who are really enjoying this conversation so far, we've done other ones. Like, I think it was boundaries near Thanksgiving. We've done some other holiday episodes. So, you can go back and find those in season 1 and 2. But it's such a simple tool that can be used. And one of the biggest things, I used to be somebody who had a harder time getting up and leaving because I'm very strong minded, right? I have opinions, I have things that I feel firmly in. So when your freaking Uncle Larry says something unhinged, you want to just be like, let's tussle. right? Let's do
Yes.
this. Let's go around and around, Uncle Larry.
I
And
literally had an Uncle Larry that I experienced this with, like, no joke.
it's always an Uncle Larry.
Yeah.
And you want to, and here's the thing, you can, right? You have that choice. You can.
Yep.
However, what we have to remember is if I engage with this person, what is Uncle Larry's going to go home back to his whatever world it may be. And that conversation, maybe it pokes something in him. So have it, right? But remember that it's not about him. It's about you. You are the one who's committed to the growth. You're the one listening to this podcast. You're the one that's committed to building a life that you love and having conversations that you desire. I don't know if Uncle Larry's tuning in. I hope he does. I hope he's listening to some self-growth podcasts and reading the books and trying to become a better human, but chances are he might not be, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And so make sure that if you want to engage with conversations like that, you remember that it has everything to do with you and not much to do with them. Because your piece is what matters most. And as you were saying, all that good stuff, Maggie, I was writing down that the goal one day for me, so let's get a little personal now. The goal for me one day, my dream, is to create a space and a room and an experience that I don't need to take a break from. And that hopefully no one around me needs to take a break from. That is my goal, is that I create such a warm, loving environment for my friends and family that hopefully, who knows, I still, my brother will still be like, all right, bitch, I still need a moment away from you, right? But hopefully the goal and a dream of mine is to create environments where we don't need breaks from it, right? And maybe we still do in some ways, but we typically need breaks when an environment doesn't feel safe and warm. And what creates safe, warm environments typically is people who are committed to also improving themselves to become kinder, warmer people. And the very, very, very real truth is that there are many people who are more than happy to not ever engage in that type of self-work. And I don't say that as an insult. I know and can only imagine for many, that type of work is extremely hard and painful, and it's very difficult to live a life like that, right? And it's also really difficult to live a life where people need a break from you and you need to wonder why, right? And so that is the vision moving forward. And in the present moment, like you're saying, Maggie, sometimes you just need to get it from the table from Uncle Larry and say, I'm going to step outside, or not even say anything. That's one of my favorite ones. Okay. So most of my holidays are spent in New York, and even in my coziest of holidays, I could be with the most loving of humans that I love and adore. Sometimes it's still just nice to go outside for a minute. There's something about that crisp air, especially if you're in New York or, the Northeast, where you get that, like, Thanksgiving is just like, I feel that winter is near, or in some places, winter's already full on happening. And that crisp air can just be so refreshing throughout the day, because no matter what, even if you are in the environment that I'm describing for my future, right, and what I want to not need a break from, it's still just, let's face it, can be very overstimulating. We're not used to being around people for holidays often, unless you're a family that maybe does Sunday dinners every week. I hope to be that family one day. You might be way more used to that level of it, but I spend a lot of time by myself and in my own head. So imagine being around so many different people, let alone, God forbid, unhealed people. Forget it. Sensory overload. So some of the practical things that I will do will be stepping outside. Okay. And one of my favorite ways to do it is to grab a cup of tea, grab a cup of hot cocoa, grab a cup of coffee, whatever warm beverage I have. I want to hold the warm mug in my hands, and I want to, if you're like me, pack your Ugg slippers or whatever you've got and step outside with that warm beverage. Because all that is an act for me of self-love, that you came here as you, Meg, and you're going to leave here as you. And those moments where we can reconnect with ourselves for a minute, sometimes, God, I've been in seasons where it's just, let's get really real for a second. I have been in situations in the past where it is, I go and reconnect with myself in the freaking bathroom, wipe away the tears from my eyes, and come back down and have to remind myself that I'm leaving here and this may not be what I desire most, but it's where I am. I'm going to protect myself the best I can, and I'm going to enjoy what I can enjoy. And if that means I'm just enjoying the food or a couple moments, then that's what I'm enjoying. And I'm leaving there knowing that. But there have been many moments where I have had those experiences. And if any of you are in that right now, my heart's with you. I'm sending you tons of love, and trust that you are your safest place in that room. So we are our safest places, right? My body, spirit, mind, emotions, I am my safest place. It's my most important relationship is with myself. I know it sounds so corny, but like it's true. So how can we remind ourselves throughout the day that we are our safe place when we're going to places that may feel safe-ish or not so safe or whatever it may be, right? One of my favorite ones, and then I'll turn it back over to you, Maggie, is two things really quick. If you're in a place where you truly feel like your spirit is unsafe, like I don't even want to like use the language for you because this is for everybody to figure out for themselves. There is also 000 shame in not going to said spaces. I just want to put that out there. A lot of us, sometimes we do the dance in the middle where we're like, we're going to do this and it's going to be okay until we get to where we want to go. That's where I am, and that feels okay for me. For those of you, do not feel don't feel shame to not show up to a place that you are not in a season to show up to, because I've done that many times. I have canceled plans. I don't care what will come from it. That was me trusting myself and protecting myself. So I've been in those seasons too. So if that's you, I see you. Secondly, one of my favorite practical tips is to write myself a little note and keep it in my pocket. It could be whatever Yes, it could be whatever affirmation you want. We work on that with my clients in therapy. They'll have an affirmation that speaks to them or whatever it may be. And they will keep that with them throughout. For me, I specialize in OCD, so we do a lot of exposure therapy. So that's really hard work. And so to have something that kind of just helps you and affirms that you're in the hard work and you're here for yourself can be really special. So if that's you, I may keep a note in my pocket that says, who knows, this year it could say, you're showing up as Meg and you're taking her home with you. Like that's all we got. And that's what we're going to go with. And then on the bottom of the note, it may say, go eat some spinach dip that you made, which is fantastic. It's one of my favorites, right? And just keeping that reminder is something that can be a really practical way, as well as the fresh air. Oof, fresh air and a good little note to myself. I don't think I love anything more, Maggie.
I agree with the fresh air. A walk, going outside for a walk during a big gathering is something that I pretty much do every single time.
Yeah.
And I will intentionally talk about curating spaces. I will invite certain people that I might want to go on a walk with, kind of quietly, and I'll just peace out.
Yeah.
We're just going on a walk. I'll
I
maybe
love
tell
that.
someone and because I need that. Like I don't have the stamina to socialize for hours and hours and hours on end. Like I just don't. Okay.
Yeah.
I just
Simple
don't.
as that.
I don't know if you even noticed, but I spent about an hour of your wedding outside.
I did not notice.
Yeah, like while
Wow.
everyone was dancing, I just like went outside. Kaz came with me on the balcony. And we just like hung out there for about an hour, and then we
I
went back
love
inside when we
it.
felt ready. And no one missed me. Like it was totally fine. And
Yes.
then I felt better to like get through the rest of the day,
Yeah.
And so it's just like it's not that big of a deal. Like we make it this huge deal in our head, right? But doing those little things that help us, just it makes our experience better, and people
Absolutely.
probably aren't even going to notice.
Yep. And if they do, who cares? Right. And
Yeah.
that's another thing. I'm probably getting too specific now. I just feel very protective over our listeners who may be going to our trustees who may be going to a place where they're, let's pick on an aunt now where Aunt Linda's like, why are you going outside? Right. You're like, you don't need to explain to Aunt Linda why you're going outside. I'm just kidding.
I just want some fresh air. I'll be back.
Want some fresh air. F off, Aunt Linda. No, I'm just kidding. Protecting our peace can just be something that happens in the quiet too. Maybe it
Yeah.
happens in the loud sometimes, nothing wrong with that either. But there's also just a season, and I think that's the one that I'm in now, is my relationship with myself is so important to me, and so is my relationship with others. But when we're in a place where that doesn't feel like it's not the main character, if you will, right? Like what I'm picturing. So I got married this summer, and Maggie was one of my bridesmaids, and for my bridal shower we made it my bachelorette weekend as well. I didn't want anything crazy. I'm not a big drinker, so we all just rented an Airbnb and stayed together, and we would lay on the couch and just talk for hours. And like, God, my heart could just swell with joy from those moments of like seeing my closest people, my three closest girlfriends, Maggie and two others, being together and sharing space for each other. And I could melt into those moments, right? Like those are some of my favorite moments ever. And sometimes it's still just stimulating. And we all went back to our own individual rooms, shut the door, and we're like, we need a reprieve from each other too. So it's not always that it's this negative experience that we're escaping from. Sometimes it's just the quiet that we need in between the wonderful stimulating conversations. It's not always the Uncle Larrys who are making us overstimulated. Sometimes it's just the togetherness of the good stuff that we need that moment away to kind of soak it in and feel that way. So
Yeah.
it made me
And
think of
it's
that very
okay.
special weekend.
Yeah, that was a very special weekend. I loved it. And you were like, "Peace out. I'm going to take a bath. I'll be back later." Like
Yes.
it's fine. And I think you say this about me, but other people say this about me. Like they know that when I need a minute, I'm just gonna disappear, and then I'll be back when I'm ready. Like they know. My friends know it. My family knows it. And guess what? Everyone still loves me. I think so.
Mm-hmm.
it's it's good, right? It's good. I
Yeah.
can only show up. I think this is what I want to end with is that there's two things. One, I can only show up as my best for someone else if I'm actually feeling my best, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I don't do the things to take care of myself, then I'm not a joy to be around anyway, right?
Sure.
So that's the first thing. And then the last thing is that I try to take all of these tips, no matter what it is, whatever the strategy, the intention, I just try to lay them on a foundation of kindness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of those things that I come back to, when it comes to, for example, getting up from the table during a conversation, right? I can choose to engage, like you said, or I can choose to walk away. And if I can engage with kindness, then maybe I
Mm-hmm.
will if I have the energy to do so. But if I can't engage with kindness, I'm going to walk away because that's the
Mm-hmm.
kindest thing I can do in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really, what I try to come back to because it's not worth it to not be kind. Usually, there's a time and a place for everything, right? But usually, 99% of the time, that's what I'm looking at. That's my baseline.
Mm-hmm. And I love that your baseline is what is showing through most of the time for our values, right? And I love that you leave room for that time and a place because there absolutely is that time and a place. And the cool thing is that we all get our own values, right? That may not be somebody else's value. Theirs may be that they, show up in a different way and they enjoy conversations that, whatever they may bring, A through Z, right? And we all get to choose that for ourselves, right? So each of you trustees, most of you probably fall in line. I think most humans fall in line with I want to have loving, as I always say, mutually beneficial, mutually nurturing relationships with people, right? As human beings, most of us fit into that category. And it's always trying to figure out what does that look like for me right now? Because it changes. It changes every single year for me, depending on where I am, what my needs are, what is going on situationally within families, systems, where, economic status. There's so many things that affect how we show up, right? And so taking inventory of that, and you're already doing that just by listening to an episode like this of ours, of thinking for yourself, what do I want from this year? And to remember, it's okay for it just to be a day too. If it's just a day, it's just a day. For me, I think I love holidays because they feel like almost like real life experiments of what I've been working on, right? I'm showing up with people. That's how we oftentimes like feel out our growth, is like, okay, I can think about this in my head all day long, but how do I actually engage in the world? How do I actually engage with humans closest to me, right? I would not be so as a counselor, as a therapist in training, your congruency is really important. So who I am in my life for my people should be congruent to how I show up with my therapist, or how I show up with my clients. So if I'm a monster outside of sessions, right, and I'm out here not acting on kindness, no empathy, all the things, and then I show up in my sessions and portray that, I'm not a congruent human being. And that's a value of mine, is to be congruent. So holding that space for myself, for my clients, for other people is a value of mine, which means it needs nurturing. Our values typically need tune-ups, if you will, right? We have to check in with ourselves and do those things. And here's the last thing I'll say. The Uncle Larrys of the world don't have that memo. So please don't be surprised when he's like, we're not reading the same books, right? We're not engaging in the same things. So it's about you and your experience, whether it's a day or a moment or a human experience or experiment, like I try and make it. We're here for you. I love, Maggie, that for one of our holiday episodes, we have our community name of, Trust Pod and Trustees. It feels so good. And it feels so good to be in community with humans in general, and more, and very specifically, and more specially than that, our community here with our trustees and our little trust pod that we're creating.
Yes, I love it so much. Thank you for coming along this journey of an episode with us. And I hope that you are leaving this episode with, a little bit of maybe hope, right? Is what you're leaving with, that you can have a good day that you are maybe excited about. Right. So that is what I hope for you. And we are just sending you so much love, whether you're about to have the best day of your life or maybe one of the hardest ones.
We're here for you for both and everything in between.
Oh, yeah. And on that
we love you all.
We'll see you next week.
Yes. Bye.
Okay, bye. Thank you for joining us on another episode of You Can Trust Yourself with Meg and Maggie. Our mission is to leave you with encouragement and tools to nurture your ability to trust yourself. If you found this episode valuable, don't forget to subscribe and please share it with a friend. Then take a moment to leave us a 5-star rating and review. Your support helps our show grow, and for that, we are extremely grateful. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch the episodes. Till next week, lots of trust and love, Meg and Maggie.